Hey, it's Justin Douglas with Mastery Tree. The focus is how to grow more freedom by mastering the things that matter. So, in the last video, which I just made before this and cut it short because I wanted you to do the exercise in that video, this is the second tool. If you haven't watched that video yet, go ahead and watch it because I don't want to give a bunch of background to this. We're talking about goals, how to achieve them in a way that everything else in your life benefits. Because Mastery Tree, the whole idea of this is if you saw a tree where one branch was just growing like crazy and the rest of the tree was stagnant, there are some problems with that, right? And you've probably had that experience maybe where maybe you set a goal or a New Year's resolution, and as you started to pursue that, as you started to move towards that outcome, you could tell there was going to be some costs involved, some sacrifices that were probably not worth it. I know when that's happened in my life, it's been an easy chance to just say, you know what, I wasn't thinking enough, I was maybe too emotional at the time, whatever, and I'm just going to drop this goal, and you kind of let yourself off the hook. And I think in some ways it's good because you didn't harm, whether it was your relationships or finances or whatever, you didn't cause harm. But the problem is it's a way to justify and to settle with, well, maybe I didn't, grow that one branch out crazy, but you're not really growing anything intentionally either. You're just going back into just let everything grow as it does, and there's no real intention or direction involved. So the idea of this is really to figure out how to avoid the problems of having something that takes you totally off balance and out of focus and harming things that matter. And also, how do you not just settle though? Like, how do you not just get stuck in this idea that, well, all those things are going to cost something, so I'll just stay where I'm at. And the tool, the first, I guess, well, there's 4 questions to this tool. I'm going to read the questions first of all, and I'll have them in the description as well. And I'll tell you a little bit of the story of how to make these questions powerful. Well, it was funny. The first time I ever heard of a question being a tool, I think it was Tony Robbins that had said, I'm positive it was him. And I remember him saying, like, I'm going to give you a tool and it's going to do this. And I remember being so excited thinking, okay, there's like, I was in construction, like I love tools. And I just thought, he's going to give me something awesome, to be able to do. And then he asked just a series of questions. I remember thinking, what? Like, why would you call that a tool? It's just a couple of questions. Like, why would there be any value? And the thing that's so crazy is, it wasn't a bunch of hype. What I found is that asking the right question and doing it in the right order, it's crazy. I think some of the most valuable things that I have are the questions that I ask myself. And so these are 4 of my questions that mean a lot to me because they have shaped a lot of the things that I've been able to experience and accomplish. And so the first one is, what in my present condition is no longer acceptable? The second one is, what in my ideal future do I want to have, be, and do? I talked a little bit about this in that first the first exercise, the first tool, the 100 questions. And so I'll get into this, so this is the quick summary of that, and then it goes deeper. The third question is, what am I afraid of? And the fourth question is what do I love? And in parentheses I have opposite of my fears. And sometimes using the opposite helps. And so that's why, at least for me personally, that's why I have that included. So now, those 4 questions, you might say, maybe they do sound valuable or good to you. I can tell you that they're extremely valuable to me, but they're even more valuable because of the tool that I'm giving you beyond just the questions. This is a tool that I got in a mastermind with some really amazing people. And the one who taught it was Dean Graziosi. He's a guy I have tons of respect for. Dean. I know a lot of amazing people, and Dean is one of those truly, like, his heart is so. There's not that many people that I think everything they say, even when it sounds way over the top, they mean fully with every part of themselves, and that's something that I just love about Dean. So he taught this in this mastermind and had a huge impact on my life then, and since then I've used it a bunch of times, and so I've gotten better at it. And so I am going to describe it. I'm going to give one of the examples of me actually going through with these 4 questions. And so I will pretend this didn't actually happen in this last time, but since I want to have the story with these questions and I don't want to just have a long video, I'm just going to pretend that this is my actual time when Dean first taught me. So this is Dean saying, Dean said, he said, what are you trying to accomplish? But this is solid. I pretended and I really did, because this works better if somebody asks you. I forgot to tell you that. It's called 7 layers deep, but this method, it does work better if somebody asks you. If it's your first time ever doing it, see if you can get somebody to help you to do this. I've done it enough times where I just visualize Dean asking me. So Dean is like, Justin, what in your present condition is no longer acceptable? And I wrote down wasted time and resources. And then I see him smiling and saying, okay, so you're saying that the wasted time and resources is what's no longer acceptable. So why is that? Like, why does that matter to you? And that's the 7 layers deep. The trick is like, and this is the funny thing when Dean went through this first time. So I thought, well, okay, why? Well, really, the reason why it's bothering me is I'm allowing my fears to hold me back. That was my next answer. And so I heard Dean say, okay, Justin, well, I asked you what right now is no longer acceptable, and you said that it was because you had wasted time and resources, and then when I asked you why, you said that you were allowing your fears to hold you back. So why does that matter? Why is that important to you right now? And then I answered, I thought about it, and I remember thinking, like, what is the thing? What's, meaningful at that? And I put, because I'm moving towards addictions and distractions. And what that looks like to me, like, yesterday. And I don't feel like I have to be super strict or anything with my health. I do a good job. But I walked by, there was an open bag of Kit Kats, these little mini Kit Kats. And I don't know, I know that I had more than 5, but I know that I had less than 8. But I really couldn't tell you, how many that I had exactly. Just because I kept going, every time I went past, I'd just reach over and grab 1 or 2. And and to me, and that sound like a little funny thing that's maybe really small, right? But just from my past, and I just recognized that there wasn't any need. There wasn't I wasn't hungry. It was me thinking, oh, that'll make me feel good. I'll just have 1 of those. And that's just, I've just conditioned myself to there's certain warning signs, little like red lights that I think, okay, I've got to pay attention. And the thing is I do that because I know that I don't want to use willpower on myself. I don't want to struggle, and by doing the things that I'm trying to teach, it becomes something that is more intentional, and it isn't just willpower, and it's not just forcing your way to overcoming something or to accomplishing something. It's setting up in a way that's just, it's more natural in the growth process. It's more it's just more sustainable. Willpower is not sustainable. It's going to run out. And so I've had to learn all these things because I tried all that other stuff and it didn't work. So getting back to this. So Dean, as I told him that, he's like, okay, Justin, so you just told me, I just asked you what in your present condition is no longer acceptable, and you told me that you weren't okay with the waste of time and resources. And when I asked you why that was important, you said that it was allowing you, that you were allowing your fears to hold you back. And then I asked why that was important, and you just said that you seem to be moving towards addictions and distractions. So why is that important? Why does that matter? And I thought about that. And as you're going to do this process, as Dean described this to me too, like you start to feel an emotional attachment to your answers. It's not just writing it down. And I remember thinking, what is it about that? Like, why am I seeing those things happen more regularly than they should? And I wrote down, and I put neglecting key relationships. And and then I heard Dean, and I literally, this sounds kind of tedious, and it is. It takes time. I don't know how to get around that. I think if you do shortcut it, then you lose. The treasures, that the whole idea of this stuff, it's easier to do the work now, to be intentional now and this kind of stuff, than it is to have January 2nd or January 3rd come up and you're just thinking, oh, I can't get out of bed. Why did I set this goal? And having that struggle over and over again, where you had tried to move forward and tried to start something big, and you just found out that this isn't going to work, or you're forcing yourself. This might seem like work, but it makes it so much better and so much easier. Okay, so I heard Dean telling me, so Justin, I asked you what's no longer acceptable, and you can kind of shortcut a little bit, but be present and feel it. I had no distractions too. I had my phone out, like in a different room when I did this too. And you told me it was a waste of time and resources. And when I asked you why, you said that you were allowing your fears to hold you back. And when I said that, why is that a big deal? You said that you were moving towards addictions and distractions. And I asked why that was important. And you said you're neglecting key relationships. So let me ask you, why is that a big deal now? Like, what's really wrong about all this stuff right now? And I wrote down that there's a lack of growth and progress in the areas that are meaningful to me. And so then I started, and it's funny because that might sound like I'm saying the same kinds of things, and it might sound that way to you, that as you're writing it out, that you're going in a loop. And it's okay. Like, just at least go through 7 times, because the thing is as I went through this process, I gained insights that I didn't even realize I didn't have. It's the same thing with those 100 questions. Like, there's things that you are going to gain from this that you can't get any other way. So this is about gaining perspective. It's about having a clarity around what you want, and why you want it. So Dean said again, all right, so what in your present condition is no longer acceptable? And I put waste of time and resources, and you said, okay, I got that. Why is that a big deal? And then you answered, allowing my fears to hold me back, and I said, why? And you said that was moving towards addictions and distractions. And sometimes you need to pause, because you can go through the motions. And I paused and felt some of that discomfort and some of that pain of like, I'm not okay with that. Then I heard Dean say, so why is that a big deal? I'm like, because it's making me neglect key relationships. And he said, well, why is that important? And I was like, because it's making a lack of growth and progress in the areas that are meaningful to me. So, Justin, like, why is that? Why does that matter, really? And I wrote down that means there's a lack of meaningful contribution. And I started really feeling that and thinking, like, wow, that's, like, I want to contribute. I want to help and bless other people. And I know that. I've said that kind of thing. But when I wrote it this time, I felt it. And the whole idea of this, too, one of the reasons why it's so important to this, and maybe this is getting off on a tangent, and I'll go into this a little bit in the workshop, but one of the things that I have learned, there's tons of studies that back this up, when you have a thought about something, there's a connection is made. Your neurons fire and wire together. That's an analogy. Obviously, there's not wires, but the idea is that there's a connection there. There's a link. And all of a sudden, because there's a connection, that pathway that can travel. It's a new connection that's been made, and it has a certain amount of strength that you can access on, like, your recall, on trying to make something into a habit, or just like retention. If you learn something and make that connection of learning, and if you remember it, if you hear something once, it might be a weak connection, right? What happens is when you have emotion involved in something, the emotion, and I don't know that they have this measured. I've heard a bunch of different numbers. I shouldn't say a bunch, but the number that I chose, that I've just for myself, the reality is it's a huge factor. It's overwhelming how much of a difference it makes to have emotion involved. But the number that I like the best, that I've heard the most often, is 2,000 to 1. So if you have emotion with something, it's like having that thought repeated 2,000 times. That's how much stronger the connection is on those neurons that are made when you have that emotion involved. So just me feeling, I feel like I'm not having a meaningful contribution. Recognizing, like, all of a sudden that's something that's I can access that in the future now in a way that I couldn't before. Because before it might have just been an idea or a thought, but now there's a way stronger link. So that's the whole point. Hopefully this is helpful, that I explain some of the reasons why as I'm trying to tell the story. So then I heard Dean say, okay, Justin, you know what's coming, and you kind of have to be playful and fun with this too. And I did. I was kind of joking with myself. And because I did this with all 4 questions. So I heard Dean say, okay, Justin, I asked you what in your present condition is no longer acceptable, and you said there's wasted time and resources. And I asked why. Why is that a big deal? And then you said you're allowing your fears to hold you back. And then I asked why. And then you said you were moving towards addictions and distractions. I said why that was important. You said you were neglecting key relationships. And I asked why that was important. And you said there's a lack of growth and progress in the areas that really mean something to you. And you can rephrase some of these things too. And actually I think it's helpful, because sometimes, like, I actually changed a couple of the words as I went through this process. And then I asked why on that, and you said it was because you had a lack of meaningful contribution. And I'm really curious now. And we're going pretty deep, but why does that matter to you? And it took me a little while to get to this one. I thought about it, and I was probably like a minute or 2 minutes just thinking about it. And I answered, because I'm allowing my energy, my health, my strength, there is atrophy happening. Like, I feel that there's an atrophy there. Like, I'm in all those areas of my life, like, I'm going backwards. And I felt that, and I feel it now. It's crazy how real that is to me. Like, the thing is it's funny because I've never been able to yet, and maybe this is because I haven't gone deep enough, but I've never been able to. Dean said, he's like, you know that you've arrived, you know that you've gotten to the real answer when you cry, when you can't hold the tears back. And I've spent a lot of time trying, and I haven't cried yet in that. And I have become a softie over the years. I don't know what's happened to me with my kids or whatever, but I get emotional during Disney movies sometimes, and it's ridiculous. Not so much tears running down my face, but anyways. Hopefully that's helpful. And I feel like the only way that I can truly teach that lesson the way that it should be taught, the way that Dean taught me, is to actually go through that every step and model it. This is not just theory. This is not just some good idea out of a book. This has had a huge impact on my life, and on a lot of people that have done amazing things. And it was kind of fun to hear around the mastermind, to hear people who had done it, people I totally respected and admired, and to hear some of the stories, and just to think, like, this sounds so simple. Like, how could something so simple have such a big impact? Like, I've got to get this figured out. And then kind of the maddening thing, and I don't know, hopefully I didn't set you up to fail. Like, I really don't think you have to cry to get to the core why. I don't know, maybe I'm missing out because I haven't gotten there yet. I'm going to keep trying, so, because it sounds kind of fun to get to that level of just raw emotion connected to an idea. But even now, like, there's something about gaining the clarity of things that are true, like to you, to your core, and it allows you to grow in a way that is so much more powerful and so much more sustainable than just the typical write down the goals, or whatever maybe sounds good to other people. So I really challenge you. The 7 layers deep, those 4 questions will be in the description. And I'm really curious if any of you, I would love to get comments if any of you done this, and just a little story. Feel free to either just like direct message me or whatever. I'd love to hear if you have any questions about it, if you have any like breakthroughs that you're open and wanting to share. This has been one of the funnest things that I've taught people, because I've seen how meaningful it's been for me. And when I hear about people, it's one of my favorite things to hear when people will describe, I hadn't thought about this, or I didn't know this was such a big deal to me. And it really is awesome to me. So I do hope that, like, that's always been, one-on-one, person to person. And so, obviously comments, or I don't know, whatever you feel comfortable with. So yeah, I so much hope that this has been helpful. And I really hope that you do the work. It's so much better to put in some effort and to put in some time. When we talk about mastering things that matter, it's not about working harder. Hard work's involved, but it's just so much better when you can do it in a way that's intentional. So, until the next video, we'll see ya.